have been muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box on your screen, and questions will be addressed at the conclusion of the webinar. There will be a drawing after the webinar takes place for your chance to win a Sonos speaker. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. And now I'll hand things over to Scott Mann, Director of North American Channel Sales at Scale Computing. Scott, take it away.
Thank you very much, Carlene. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate everybody taking some time out of their day today to listen in on our presentation. We're going to talk a little bit today about I like to say the next generation, or I used to say the future of IT infrastructure, but really the future's here. So the next generation of IT infrastructure, and specifically how it relates to MSPs and how this is benefiting MSP practices and the MSP offerings that you're able to give. So we're going to walk you through kind of a journey here today. It's not necessarily your typical agenda. We're going to walk you through really Scale's journey and what's leading us up to this new trend in the IT infrastructure world, which is edge computing. So our journey to the edge. And then finally, we'll hit it off with how this impacts the MSP communities and our MSP program and how they're benefiting from this new trend, this new enterprise trend, why this is making sense at the smaller SMB and managed service level. So to start things off, back in 2008 is when Scale was first incorporated. And to understand what makes us a great fit for the edge, you have to understand what we set out to do. And that was to really redefine or revolutionize what virtual infrastructure looked like and meant to small to medium-sized enterprises. So we put an emphasis around small to medium-sized enterprises because all of our founders came from this type of world, and they felt that there wasn't really a solution out there that was catered towards this type of market. Every solution out there was built for large enterprises and had tons of licenses, tons of features that weren't being utilized, and then features were stripped away and the licensing costs were still there, and this was their SMB or mid-market product that they had.
Yeah, he was just like,
hey, Carlene, can you
I was like, can we work with it? But he sent over the stock. So
Carlene, can you mute yourself?
This, the webinar? Yeah, I'm just.
There we go. Sorry about that. So then in 2010, we decided to adopt KVM as our underlying hypervisor. So that our H3 product that was in development, and the reason we chose KVM was for that exact reason. We wanted to eliminate the licensing costs associated that we thought were unnecessary at this level, at the small to mid market. We're typically talking to a customer that's running a much more agile team. They're running a smaller team. Sometimes it's 0 people in IT, and that's fully outsourced. Sometimes it's up to 5. Not really much more than that. If it's 10, it's only a few people really handling the infrastructure. Where they're generalists, they're jack of all trades. They have to juggle a lot of different projects, from the infrastructure to the networking to the security, and a lot of things piling up on their plate. Where these reactive, they have to be reactive with a lot of the things when it's associated with the infrastructure because they just don't have the time in the day to be proactive on it. So we wanted to create a system that would allow them that time of the day back. We wanted to create a system that they could set and forget it, and that's exactly what we did. We launched our HC3 hyperconverged solution, which was essentially it's the integration of servers, storage, and compute resources, which I'll get into more of the specifics of that. We launched that back in 2012. So a brand new virtualization infrastructure that was purpose-built, that was catered toward the small to mid-sized enterprises. And some people get a laugh out of this. When we actually did launch this, we launched it, and the marketing campaign around this was no VTax. So eliminating the VMware licensing that we felt was unnecessary in the small to mid-sized environments that we cater towards. And we actually launched this at VMworld. So back in 2012, when we launched this, we had a ton of people at our booth coming around. There's a lot of hype around not necessarily hyperconvergence, but this new technology that was going to save everybody a lot of time. And when some of the people from VMware came by and this technology sounds fantastic, but how does it incorporate our solution? And when we were kind of laughing and saying, oh, that's the best part, that it doesn't, we eliminate having to use VMware. We immediately got booted out of the conference. But we really made a bold statement from a press perspective, a PR perspective, as we're getting booted out mid-conference and having to pack everything up. We never got invited back after that, but it was a bold statement. We've held true to that message from day one, eliminating the licensing that we felt was unnecessary in that small to medium-sized environment. So now let's talk about what hyperconvergence is. It's a big, long word, and there's a ton of different subjective terms to hyperconvergence based on who you're talking to. But the foundation of what we created, hyperconvergence is the integration of servers, so your compute resources, your storage, and the virtualization layer into one single solution architecture. So into one single pane of glass, if you will, into one single layer where the virtualization layer can speak directly to the storage layer. And that's where the hyperconvergence comes from. Hyper is the hypervisor, convergence is converged infrastructure. What does that look like? So this is the traditional infrastructure that I would say is more of a mid-market level, or with 3 host servers. Sometimes it'll be 2 host servers, maybe in 1 host server. Sometimes it'll be more. It'll be 5+ host servers. Where you got 3 ESXi hosts in this scenario. You're obviously running ESXi, so you got VMware sitting off the top layer up there. Where the applications are running off of, and everything's mapped at the bottom towards the shared storage. So if one of the host servers goes down, everything can get up and running. Now, each one of these layers, from the virtualization to the servers to the storage, each one of these layers has its own management interface. Each one of these layers has its own backend. Each one of these layers has its own support line that you have to call into. So it's a lot to manage from an SMB perspective. When we're talking a single person shop, to wait on the line for 8 hours with their server provider, for the server provider to say it's not us, it's your virtualization provider, and then to wait on the line with that virtualization provider for them to point the finger at the storage layer, and then when all's said and done, everything gets pointed back at Microsoft at the end of the day, and you just want to get they just want to get this issue resolved as quickly as possible. So we felt that this, the architecture itself wasn't really built for this smaller environment. It was still too complicated to be supported by these smaller IT shops. So we started at the foundation of what the architecture looked like. We needed to simplify the architecture to make it more cost effective, to make it more efficient, to make it easier to manage. And that's exactly what we did. So we took this multi-layered approach, the 3-layered approach, and we reduced it down into a single layer. So here you see each one of these would represent a node. So one of those servers that you see on the left side there, each one of those servers is a node. It's got its own compute resources. It's utilizing the storage that's built into it, and it's got the virtualization already loaded in our software called HYPERCORE, which incorporates the KVM under the hood of it, and our own block engine that we've built into all of this. So now these 3 different nodes, they act as one big pool of resources. So whether it's a VM running on node 1 or a VM running on node 3, if that node goes down, it's using the shared storage on one of the other nodes, and everything can get up and running automatically. If a drive fails, the system's got built-in state machines, so it's going to recognize that that drive has failed. We don't have redundant copies of data. It's going to take that data, it's going to rewrite it to another drive. So we've eliminated a lot of the day-to-day headaches that are associated with a traditional environment. You have a drive fail on a weekend, and it's your customer. You don't have to jump to everything, because that drive fails, that's okay. You can get that next day and you can go swap that out. The system is still running. Other than the notification that you're going to get, nothing else is wrong with the system, and the one less drive that you have, of course. If you have a whole node failure, same thing. We built this in to be redundant so that you can lose that whole entire node, and everything will still spin up on the two other ones remaining, so you don't have to drop everything and drive out an hour to go get to that customer to get a new drive swapped out. When that node comes back, whenever time that node gets in, go get that, put it in. It'll take you 10 minutes to put the drive in, have it connected, and everything to balance itself back out. So we created a system that was simple. It takes less than an hour to deploy. From a management perspective, whether it's you or your customer managing it, it's going to take away the OpEx cost of you managing it for your customer, because you can let the system run and still accrue the monthly recurring revenues and not eat into those revenues by having to touch the system on a daily basis. Or if it's your customer running it, your customer doesn't want to have to play around in it every day for an hour. They want a system that they can go focus on the other projects that are going to be revenue generating for you and for their organization as well. From a scalability perspective, you can start out with a single node, or if you have a 3-node system, you can add on another node. You can mix and match any of our different nodes across the board. So these systems you see right here, these are built on the Lenovo SR630 platform. If we have other systems, previous systems that might have been a Dell Supermicro platform, whatever that may be, they could be different RAM capacities, different storage capacities, different types of drives from SSDs to spinning. You can mix and match all of them across the board. You kind of think of them like Lego blocks. You take 3 Lego blocks. When you want to add another one, doesn't matter the size, the color of it, you can put that Lego block back onto it and continue to expand. You just need to keep in mind redundancy. You don't want to add a single node that's bigger than the entire cluster. and it's got the built-in availability. So it's within our HyperCore operating system, there's the KVM piece of it, so the hypervisor running. There's our own block engine called Scribe, which is what allows the shared storage across all the different nodes. And there's also state machines that are built into it that are managing all these different conditions. So they're managing thousands of conditions per node, things like down to the block level within the drives, or the sectors within the drive. If there's a bad sector, it's gonna tell the system to stop writing to that drive because that drive is about to fail. So it's just going to be used for reads. And then when that drive does fail, it's going to take that single copy of everything else that's left, and it's going to rewrite that copy because it knows it's not redundant, and we need to maintain redundancy within the cluster. And then we also built in backup and replication into this. So now we're not only talking server storage and virtualization, we've included backup and replication capabilities. So locally, you can recover down to the file level. You can recover a full VM if there was something that a crashed application or something that you need to recover back from 30 minutes ago, an hour ago, maybe a day ago, or if it was an owner that deleted a very important file that they need to go recover, you could just go recover that single file. Then you could take all of that data and you can replicate it to, let's say, another single node at a secondary site, or you can replicate it over to the cloud. You can replicate it over to our HC3 Cloud Unity platform, or being a managed service provider, you can replicate that over to your data center. And then you're providing a DR as a service functionality where you can get everything up and running in 3 clicks. And then when everything is back up online at their main data center, 3 clicks to send it all back. It's just going to send over the blocks that have changed, and everything will be back up online at their primary site. And all of this we've built around the main premise is being affordable. We know the customer that we were targeting after, we had to create a very affordable system. That's why we eliminated the licensing costs. We eliminated the virtualization costs especially, and now we're incorporating other features that have additional licensing costs like backup and replication, which are some functionalities that customers of this size might not even have considered at this point because of the costs that are associated with this. We can bundle all this together into a great solution that incorporates your servers, your storage, virtualization, and now your backup and a disaster recovery plan. Now we've launched this hyperconverged solution, and we leveraged KVM under the hood of it. And KVM obviously wasn't as well known a name back then. It was very much VMware across the board. But KVM started to gain a lot more popularity. Google leveraged them for their Google Enterprise Cloud platform, their GEC platform. Apple ended up switching over from VMware into KVM. And since then, it's the most widely used hypervisor globally. It's just not a commercialized hypervisor. You don't have to pay anything for the hypervisor. We bundle all that into the hood of it, and we've created a beautiful UI around that is very intuitive and easy to manage. So you don't even have to know what KVM stands for. You just have to know that's what's powering your system under the hood of it. You don't need to go into the command line and play around with it or anything like that. And since 2016, we had over 1,500 customers that had adopted our HCI KVM solution, our KVM-based HCI solution, I should say. And since then, scale has grown pretty substantially. We've got now over 3,000 customers, tens of thousands of systems deployed globally, but we're not the big brand name out there. I like to call us the best kept secret in the industry, and that's because of our go-to-market approach. When we went to market with the solution, we knew that we had to be very cost effective to our customers because that was very important in the market that we're playing in. So we had to take a product first approach. Instead of being a brand first approach where you're funneling hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing and PR, we knew we had to build a product that will stand on its own 2 feet, and our customers will go out of their way to reference and to help build us up. So at the foundation of our solution and the foundation of our culture, it's best-in-class support. And that's really what's elevated us and has gotten us to this point without necessarily being one of the big box names or having one of the big box names under us. And we've gotten a lot of support and recognition in the industry, now partnering with companies like Intel, Lenovo, Google, and APC that are helping to build our brand awareness around this all. But we've built this cost-effective solution that our customers go out of their way to tell us, to tell the communities how great this is. And that's been a lot of the reason that we've been able to grow this rapidly in this type of a competitive market. And we've become the highest rated and the most reviewed hyperconverged solution out there. So all the different peer review sites you can see on here, from Spiceworks, TrustRadius, TextValidate, even Gartner Peer Reviews, which is a bit more of an enterprise platform. We've got hundreds of reviews out there, and they all say the same thing. The product does exactly what they say it's going to do. It saves them time on their day, and the support experience that they got from implementation to day-to-day management of it was been phenomenal. Now from there, something funny happened. We got pulled upstream. So if you saw my previous slide, I kind of already had this in there, but distributed enterprises. We got pulled upstream into distributed enterprises where we didn't typically play into. But if you think of what a distributed enterprise is, remote office, a branch office, you think the retail space where they have all these remote sites all across, could be all across the globe, it could be all across North America, it could be all across this particular state. But they've got all these different sites, and typically these sites don't have anybody, they have either one or nobody in IT. You think of like gas stations. Gas stations don't have anybody in IT, but they've got an infrastructure that's running there. So what happened with us was we're great for an SMB solution, right? Which means we're hyper efficient. Why are we such a good fit at this smaller level? Because we can scale down the footprint that many of our competitors couldn't. And to give you a perspective of that, we created this hyper efficient architecture, right? So us starting out at the foundation, us going back to the core architecture of what the virtual stack looked like, and redefining that and making it a lot more efficient rather than adding another software layer on top of it, made us a great fit in this distributed enterprise space. On the left side there, that's called the VSA model. That's a competitive hyper-converged model, where it's all the lines that you see there, that's the data path that any data has to go through. If you are in, let's say, a Word document and you change a period to a comma and you click save, it has to jump through 14 different steps in order to write, 12 different steps in order to write it to disk redundantly on 2 separate nodes. And the basis of a VSA is a virtualized storage appliance. So what they're doing is they're taking the physical controller and all of the resources associated with that physical controller, and they're virtualizing it. So the virtual storage appliance. And those resources that are associated with it still exist. It just exists at another level. It exists at the virtual level now, so within their software. And there's a lot of OS consumption with that. So you're consuming anywhere for a 3-node system, 72 gigs to 300 gigs of RAM and 12 cores. And now in the enterprise space, that's a drop in the pan. That is not going to impact them at all. But in the space that we play in this SMB, the smaller market, and these distributed enterprises, that is that's a lot of cost associated with it. And when you have to be very cost effective in your approach, you're paying for resources that you can't use. You're paying for resources in their licensing, in Microsoft licensing, and just on the physical components that are not being utilized at all. And it's a large percentage of the overall resources that they're going to have in that type of environment. So our approach on the right side, that's HC3. That's the HC3 approach. It's a fraction. It's 25% of the data path of a VSA model. And the amount of OS consumption, the overhead, it's 12 gigs and a fraction of a core. And those 12 gigs are carved out 12 gigs, and sometimes it'll use less, it'll never use more. So you're talking 12 gigs writing off of it, off of a 3-node system and a fraction of a core. We can basically run our entire workload on the OS overhead of the competitive approach, which is what makes us such a great fit in this SMB market, in the mid-market, and in these distributed enterprise markets where the lightweight platform is king. We're looking at a 64 gig node right here, or a 64 gig server. Our operating system versus a VSA model, at the low end, a VSA is going to run 24 gigs. On our side, we're going to run 4 gigs. There's still plenty of room left to run the however many workloads that they need to run on that. Now when we want to get even smaller, because when we think like gas stations, small SMB customers that are only 50 seats, they're probably not even going to need 64 gigs, especially if we're talking a cluster of 3 64 gig nodes. That's probably way more RAM than they're going to need. On the left side, we're consuming pretty much everything, not really enough to run anything other than the OS. On the right side with HC3, you can still run those 2 to 6 workloads that they need to run. And we can provide them with another level of redundancy on top of that as well. So the best use case, I keep saying retail because that is a fantastic one. We basically built this product around these enterprise requirements, right? So they wanted to be able to manage these thousands of sites from a single location, and Ahold Delhaize is one of those use cases for us. They're an $80 billion organization, top 3 retailer in the world, with corporately owned around 7 to 8,000 sites, and franchised over 10,000 sites that they have. So a massive undertaking, but they needed a system at each one of their stores as they're future-proofing their stores for all this IoT and technology that's coming out, and this new AI that they have to be able to compete with online competition. They needed a platform that could support the compute resources, but also the budgets that they had there, and that can be managed from the one head office that they have in the Netherlands. And that's what the Scale solution was able to offer them at a price point that they could manage, and they could basically build a store as a service. So a store in a box that's ready to go. You want to deploy to a new site, we're refreshing the infrastructure at that site. We have the store in a box that's ready to go. You implement it, seamless implementation, and then all of a sudden it's online and they can connect to it back from halfway across the world. Some of you might be familiar with some of the offices in the Northeast, like they have, or some of the rest of the retail organizations that they have, like Food Lion, Martin's, Giant Food, kind of Northeast, East Coast grocery stores. So now we built this great solution around distributed enterprises, right? These retail companies, they have adopted us, they're deploying us. So what do? We productize that. So we created HC3 Edge. We took all of the technology that we had and we built it into our core OS, and we built HC3 Edge for edge computing. And now edge computing is this new trend in the industry, but that's a perfect fit for us. And for those that haven't heard of the term edge computing yet, you're gonna, now that I've said it, you're gonna start seeing it everywhere. It's the next big buzz term in the industry, I guess you should call it. But at the end of the day, really, what is it? It's distributed enterprises or remote branch offices. There's just been a new need that's evolved. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then this will all help define exactly how this is benefiting the MSP world. So we'll talk a bit about edge computing and then what this means to our MSPs and our MSP program. So first, to define edge computing, you have to understand the Internet of Things. So let's talk a bit about that. So here's a nice definition that I use. The Internet of Things is the network of physical objects that contain embedded technology to communicate and sense or interact with their internal states or their external environment. That's a lot of words, but basically what that means, it's a bunch of data collectors and sensors and data collectors that are gathering digital information outside of the four walls of our traditional data center. So it's collecting it at that gas station, at that retail store, and they're using this, processing this outside of the data center, and it's sending everything back to the data center. Now, if we think all this trend around IoT, there's a massive uptick of devices that are leveraging IoT, that are connecting to an edge solution. So what the edge is the edge is that IT solution that lives outside of the data center, that lives at that retailer, that grocery store, right? It's on the edge of the IT infrastructure. And just that you can see here in the graph here, so by the end of 2018 to the end of 2020, the amount of devices will have over doubled. We're going to be over 5 billion edge devices or enterprise or government IoT devices that are connected to an edge solution. So the 2010s, we all know, it was the decade of cloud computing. The quote I love there is the 2020s will be the decade of the micro data centers at the edge. Now that we're collecting all this new data, there's new regulations that are coming because they're collecting our sensitive information, and it's requiring us to build data center-like requirements at these edge sites where data centers don't exist. And around 10% of enterprise-generated data is created and processed outside a traditional data center. And by 2022, Gartner predicts that figure will reach 75%. So everything, all analysts are saying everything that's in the same line with it. Basically, we are substantially increasing the amount of data that we're collecting outside of the areas where we built all these best practices around. So there's going to be new needs around regulations and such. So what does this environment look like? And this is kind of, take this in as almost as what one of your customers is going to look like, because this is very similar, and I'll relate back to this when I get to the MSP side. So on the right side there, we've got our core, right? This is our the core cloud or big data center that they have running in a colo, or their big data center warehouse with petabytes of storage, whatever they have running it. And that's doing all the data warehousing. We've built our best practices around that. And then the edge sites, those are those grocery stores, those are those gas stations where there's not really much IT that exists there. And those endpoints, those sensors and data collectors are doing their mining. They're doing whatever functions that they need to be doing within the lighting, the freezer systems, their POS systems, and they're sending that information locally to the edge IT, that infrastructure that they have locally. A lot of the times that's just a single server. but now we're collecting more and more data, and that's requiring this real-time gathering, optimization, and doing some basic analytics to improve the experiences that we're getting at those different sites. And then we're sending that information back to the core. We're sending that information back to the core data center or the cloud, where they're doing all their machine learning, and they're improving their processes and sending that out across all the thousands of sites that they have based on the information that they're collecting, the big data that they're collecting, I guess you could say. But within the core data center, we've built all these best practices around it. We've got the staffing, we've got the security, the redundancy, the high availability, the DR. But now these edge sites where we never used to have a need for data center-like capabilities, we have very little resources from a compute and storage perspective. No IT staff. Sometimes the server or even a laptop is running where the clerk stands and it's just under the desk, or it's in a closet where they don't have much space or any power or heating considerations or anything like that. So these infrastructures, they're really not meant for mission critical applications and for the redundancy of the intellectual property that they're collecting there, because this information that they're gathering at these sites becomes mission critical now. This is very important for their organization to learn from and to improve their end user experience so that they can compete against the likes of online competition. They need to differentiate themselves from that customer experience perspective. Where does scale fit into all of this? Scale can be that enterprise level data center at a footprint size that can run at those remote sites and at a budget price point that can run at those remote sites. So they can run at that site, they can run their POS system, they can run their customer loyalty applications, their DBR, and then they have a platform that's future ready for them. So they have a platform that's ready for these new AI applications that are coming out, that are going to be leveraging all this information locally, that are going to be providing this new experience for us, and all these new different functionalities within their video systems, their lighting system, their freezers, their digital signage, and those the automated checkout systems that they're going to have, the tellerless environment, the clerkless environments tellerless environment, I should say, at like a banking or a branch office of some sort, and then have all that information sent back to whatever the core is, whether it be Amazon or some sort of cloud solution, or it's their core data center running whatever on the back end. So how does this all play into an MSP is probably where the question is going right now. That an edge computing scenario is exactly what an MSP is doing. When we launched this solution, we had a lot of our current partners come to us and say, we love this solution. It makes perfect sense for us, for our customers, because our customers are really an edge deployment. Those edge sites that they have, those are our customers. We knew that if we wanted to come up with an MSP solution, we wanted to build something that made sense for them. The business model around an MSP versus a large distributed enterprise is very different. So we need to come up with a program that matched the business models that our managed service providers were applying to these different scenarios. So basically, it was the new pricing model instead, with a separate monthly costing to be more in line with the monthly recurring revenue that they were expecting to see, rather than the CapEx approach that you would get from a distributed enterprise. So after that was basically the foundation for our MSP program, HC3 Edge, and a hyper-converged solution that had a new pricing model wrapped around it all, where you can manage your 10 to hundreds of customers from one single location and decrease your OpEx costs to increase your profits with a solution like ours. So this is what we typically saw, what we ran into. These are your typical infrastructure challenges that you'll run into from an MSP perspective. We call it the single server client. This is probably resonates with many of you on the call, where you've got a single server on-prem. That single server might have a terabyte of storage, maybe less, maybe more. It's probably running 2 to 6 VMs, and it's got maybe Hyper-V or VMware running on top of that. And then you've got a local backup appliance that's collecting whatever frequency of data that you need, that you can recover from a file loss or something, and then all of that local backup is sending over to a private or public cloud. Typically, it's whoever the local backup provider is, it's replicating over to their cloud, and you're paying a cost that isn't. You don't get the economies of scales out of that platform that you're providing. Because it's their infrastructure, you're paying based on VMs that you're getting, and the more customers that you add to it, it just becomes a cost center for you. It's not necessarily a profit center where you can build a practice around it and have everybody replicating over to their cloud and make more money by adding more customers to it. It just becomes a cost center in order for you to get your customers' data offsite and give them that disaster recovery capabilities. Excuse me. So with scale, we can build all of that into one single platform now. So we have it's a full solution for those MSP clients where you have your local server and storage compute resources with the built-in backup capabilities. So if you look at these customers on the side, instead of these being edge sites, these are now your customers. So in the top left there, we have customer one. Customer one, they just wanted a single node, all flash, all spinning node. Fantastic. They've got the local server and storage capabilities. It's got the built-in backup so that they can go recover that file if they need to recover that file. And then everything gets replicated either to HC3 Cloud Unity, or let's create a profit center for you, a new business model, and everything replicate back to a central 3+ node cluster where you're providing them DR as a service now. 3 clicks to get it up and running, 3 clicks to get it back. Or you got customer 2 on the right side here. Maybe they want to run one of our tower nodes, which I'll show you the different platforms on the next slide here. So the tower node, maybe it's running in a dental office or something like that, where there's not really ideal conditions for a data center. You need a tower node that fits into somewhere that a data center probably wouldn't normally go. Or on the bottom left, the hybrid microcluster, we want to provide them with the local HA, but we didn't want to have them pay $30, $50, $150,000 for an infrastructure when they only wanted to pay maybe $10,000 for the infrastructure, for their server, the backup solution, everything, maybe less. And we want to obviously use that on a monthly basis. Instead of providing a cluster that costs $30,000, $50,000, what if I could provide a single node that is a fraction of that cost? And let's put 3 of those single nodes together, and let's make a microcluster out of those nodes. So a smaller footprint nodes. This is what edge computing is providing benefit for, because edge computing is creating the need for smaller footprint infrastructure. So we have a standard hyper-converged cluster. Let's take down the footprint of that, and let's take down the cost point to a fraction of it, and let's provide a microcluster. And then from there, let's talk about even smaller form factor system that's a half U width, half depth, and it can run still the same amount of workload on that, and we can get a nano cluster out of that. So that's what the future of edge computing is providing to MSPs. From your perspective, you're providing local HA for the customer. So not only are you providing them with that peace of mind, you can probably provide them with better SLAs as well, because they can support a full node failure. That whole node fails, everything's still up and running. Nothing happened. By the time that the clerk clicks refresh on their email, everything's back up online on the 2 remaining nodes. And if they did have a whole site outage, you have everything replicating back to your central data center. So you've already got everything set up from a DNS failover. You 3 clicks and everything's up and running. And now everything's you've been able to do that with 3 clicks all remotely. So you're also reducing your OpEx costs. You didn't need to send somebody on site to go do that. You can have somebody go replace that single node, but they don't have to drive out an hour. We can use something local for that. And then as you build out this new profit center, you can also provide things like VM or app hosting, where you're just providing a specific, you're providing the whole infrastructure as a service for them, or maybe it's just specific applications for a use case in dental or any type of healthcare or finance even. And then you've got being able to remotely manage all of this, and you can also provide a desktop as a service offering that we have, where you can provide them full VDI. VDI from your central data center, they just connect into whatever they need to connect into that's running off of your cluster. So this becomes a new profit model for you without having to add any complexity to your overall offering. And some of the key features, so I said multi-management cluster, remote monitoring management, sorry. So we built out this multi-cluster management platform so that you can manage thousands of sites, thousands of different stores from one single platform, and you can have different tags to identify them, whether it's an application, whether it's a location, and then you can run commands on all of those different sites if you needed to, or you can sort by them differently based off of conditions. If you needed to click into them, it's a single click to get through them. And now we can sort through the different sites at a very streamlined fashion without having to jump around into different consoles. Everything's under one console. I want to get into that particular site. I click into it, and I'm there. I'm at that I'm basically at that site's UI, and I can go see everything that's running on with it, and I can remotely fix whatever's happening at that site. And then on the bottom side there, I mentioned the backup. So the backup, replication, failover, recovery capabilities built into it, where we can recover the file, we can send a full VM offsite, we can recover the VM offsite, recover a file offsite if we needed to, without having the overhead of what VMware snapshots would take, for instance. It's a very efficient because we've built in our storage layer into the hood of all of this. Now let's talk about the pricing model. So this is where we differentiate from the HC3 Edge versus the MSP program. So what we've done with our solutions and appliance, right? So it comes hardware, software, but from a pricing perspective, we've broken those out. So you've got the hardware side on the left side. That's effectively a pass-through price. So you can buy or lease the price of the node, and the nodes start at around $3,000 on the cost, $3,100 USD. I'll show you the nodes in the next slide here, but just to put that in perspective, we can get to a very aggressive price point. And then on the software side of it, it's a monthly price point that starts at $15 a core a month. You can bundle that into whatever contract you have with your customers, whether it be 12, 24, 36, or 5 years even. We've come across 60-month contracts, and that's the fully featured HyperCore solution. Everything that we've talked about, the hypervisor, scribe, our backup and replication capabilities, plus your 24/7, 365 support and maintenance with your next business hardware replacements. If you need anything more aggressive than that, we can offer that as well. And all of that in a solution that's, on a very cost-effective monthly basis. So let's look at this. So the different product families. So you've got the HE500, the tower that you saw. HE basically HYPERCORE Edge solution. It's really what it is defined around. So HE500 tower. I call this the HE500 micro. That by no means is a standard across the company. That's just how I like to differentiate it in my head. So that's the micro node. And then there's HC1000, which is basically our standard system, our most popular system. That'll range from everything from all flash, all spinning to hybrid models that could go from a few terabytes to 50, 60, 70 terabytes. And then we've got our HC5000, which are the bigger nodes. A 2U node, you can get you can have a 2U node, they're all tiered, that starts out at 38 terabytes. You can have a 3-node system that is over 100 terabytes with 3+ terabytes of RAM in it. So definitely go from the smallest of under a terabyte in an infrastructure to largest customer running about 1.5 petabytes. So very much ranges, and think about it like as a Swiss Army knife. The nodes can scale up and down based on the requirements. At the end of the day, it's going to be substantially more cost effective than another hyperconverged solution, and more cost effective than the traditional solution that you're deploying today. And on the bottom there is just some sample configurations. So one of the HE500, the micro nodes, that's a 4-core system, 64 gigs of RAM. There's 4 SSD drives in it. It's a 1 gig network on there. That starts out at $186 a month, and that would be with the hardware cost leased, and it would be the core cost on a 36-month basis. If you go up to 60 months, that per core cost comes down. If you go to 12 months, that per core cost increases a little bit. So there's savings to add more to it. If you ever did have a customer that halfway through you lost the contract, whatever happened with it, you're not in line to pay for it for the rest of it. We do have all that built in, and we have an FAQ if anybody's curious to understand how that works from a liability perspective. We've taken that into consideration so that you as the partner aren't liable to be paying us for costs that you're not recovering from your customer. On the right side there, we've got a 3-node system. So an HC1000, it's our hybrid system, so we call it the 1250. That's going to be both a flash and a spinning and SSD solution. It's got 24 cores, 3 nodes together have 384 gigs. That could be a dual core CPU if you needed it to. We could obviously increase or decrease the RAM, increase the SSD size, the drive size. There's 1 gig network capabilities, 10 gigs copper, 10 gig fiber, and that cluster would cost $860 a month with the lease price of the hardware and the monthly price of the software. Typically what we do with our partners is we build this use case around a couple samples. So I've got a couple of the different customers that are coming up for a refresh. What would it look like at their sites? What would a scale solution look like at their sites? And based on how many we have there, how many else we wanted to consider, we could figure out what a cluster would look like on the back end. So if we wanted to be able to provide that DR as a service capabilities, what would the monthly cost be for an infrastructure that, for a solution that had this many terabytes, this much RAM, and this many cores, so that all of our customers can replicate over to us, and we can run some other things like VDI off of that for desktops as a service to some of our customers, maybe expanding out that portfolio of offerings to differentiate yourself. If any questions on any of that, feel free to reach out. I know it's not the most. We're very unique in this industry when it comes to our MSP offering. You don't really see many hyperconverged solutions that can get down to this size. So I know it can come across a little confusing. If there's any questions, if you want to see examples, you can email myself, smann with 2 N's at scalecomputing.com, or channel@scalecomputing.com, and that'll go to myself and my team, and we can get back to you and have a follow-up call. Now, just to talk a little about the Scale partner community. So we're a 5-star partner community, and based on CRN's guidelines, or partner program guides. So we've won that, I think, 3 years running now, which is fantastic. And based on our partner programs, we have different partner programs. You fall under as many as you need to fall under. There's a reseller program, which is your traditional resale model. A lot of our partners started out in the resale model, and they'll still sell based on that, depending on their customer. And then they also part of the MSP program. So if they're managing the infrastructure for the customer, they're basically fully outsourced IT to them. Then they'll purchase it off the MSP program. If they're selling this to the customer and the customer has an IT shop, they'll base it off of the reseller program. So it really depends on the needs of the customer, and we can be flexible there. There's also a referral program, which we get a lot of consultants into, and then OEM program. And really what's in it for you as the partner, our solution's built to be a higher margin, higher profit solution. If we're not making you more money, then we're not doing our jobs, and we're not going to be growing together. So that's the ultimate goal of everything around the partner program, is to help increase the profits that our partners are making so that we can grow with them. And to help differentiate yourself and disrupt the market, right? There's a lot of other shops out there that are doing the exact same thing with the VMware solution and a traditional local backup appliance like a Unitrends, a Datto, or something like that. And you're differentiating yourself based on your services that you're providing. Well, we can help you with that by differentiating yourself based on the solution that you're providing as well. And then you can leverage everything that we have within our partner community, from our marketing programs, our MDF programs, leads that we'll generate together. We want to share this. We want to help you grow. We want to help you fill up your cluster so that you end up needing to expand your cluster because you got so many customers, and that's a win-win-win across all boards. Again, if you have any questions, contact us, channel@scalecomputing.com. We can go through any of this. We can talk about the referral program. It doesn't take much to get into it. You don't need to have 12 certified engineers or anything. You need to click accept on an electronic document that gets sent to you, and there's no commitments or anything that you're tying into by doing that. So very easy to get in with us, and then we'll engage with you to help enable your team, to help make the business model make sense for your company as well. And with that said, if there's any questions, I don't see any questions in there. So with that said, if there are any questions, feel free to type it into the questions box at the bottom there on your screen, and I'm happy to answer any now. If not, I've already seen a couple emails come through, so I'm happy to respond to any emails that go to channel@scalecomputing.com. I have info@scalecomputing.com on there. I should change that. Please email channel@scalecomputing.com, and we'd be happy to get back to you with any answers to any of the questions that you have. And for the draw of the Sonos speaker, we'll be doing that right after. So the lucky winner, be looking out for an email, and we'll be getting your address and everything to send all that information to. So with that said, thank you very much for everybody's time. If it doesn't look like I have any questions on there, so I'll wrap this up, and we will save everybody 15 minutes of their day. Thanks all for joining us.